stuff going off the agenda, but we do want to kind of speed things up. I think that everybody appreciate getting out a little bit earlier, but I don't want to minimize any of the panels. I think we've done, wonderful service here, continuing to try to promote and educate. And I think all of our panels have been excellent so far. And that certainly is not going to lapse with our next panel. Amplifying horse racing in a new light. As the panelists start to make their way to the stage, I just want to say I've been extremely impressed with some of the initiatives that, again, I kind of look at from a standpoint of showcasing our industry to a younger generation. We always hear that. We always kind of talk about trying to get new people into the game, and Amplifying horse racing is done just that. So Anise Montplaisir, who is the co-founder, has done a tremendous job of trying to get the message out about the horse racing industry, the professions that go along with it, and getting that to a younger crowd. And I'm very excited that she was able to come speak with us. Some of you may remember her from quite a while back with Godolphin Flying Start and trying to help out with the Thoroughbred Employee Industry Awards. She trekked around and made a case for people getting nominated. So it's been a wonderful trip that she's tried to get her passion into a different generation, or her generation. And also Price Bell. Price Bell, if you're not aware, now general manager of Family Farm, Mill Ridge Farm. But I have to divert a little bit and talk about how much I honor his father, Healy. He, one of the best men in the industry, as far as, in my opinion. He's always been there as a sounding board for me from the breeding side. He's that cliche salt of the earth, and certainly Price has developed that from his family, and he's got his own family now, instilling that Kentucky way, and has really progressed the industry forward, whether it's his initiatives in horse country, which I was very proud to kind of be a small part of when they first started way back when we did the Walt Disney group up here or in Kentucky. But now the passion that Price has kind of taken on, and it really is, it's a harness. There's a lot of negative that comes into the industry one way or the other. And now it's been mentioned, social media can be a positive, but it can also be a negative. And one of the things that we don't have enough of at times is a combatant for a lot of the problems and misinformation that gets put out there by people who quite honestly just want horse racing to go away. So looking at Light Up Racing and that initiative, I just applaud the group and the board, and he's going to talk a little bit about it and where they are to this point, and how they go forward. Now, the moderator for the panel, of course, Eclipse Award winner, Miss Jenny Reese, certainly doesn't need an introduction to this group, but I always like to say, outside my children and wife, she and Wilson Shirley are the only 5 people on my speed dial. We talk and text frequently, but very appreciative for all the efforts that she does on behalf of the Communication for National and Kentucky HBPA, but just her passion in the industry. So she was an excellent candidate to try to moderate this panel and talk, allowing these two to interact with us and talk about their initiatives. So thank you both, and look forward to it.
Thank you, Eric. I just want to start off following up on what Dr. White said about how she got so energized just listening to her fellow panelists, Anna Ford and Kirsten Green, I apologize. And it struck me, yes, that these women have taken an idea and having the passion and made a reality of it to make our industry better. And there's not a magic wand. that is going to create new racing fans or to make the haters hate us less. It takes in the trenches one-on-one work. And, I think we have two really inspiring people here. In fact, speaking of next generations, I had to Google and see what generations you all were. And Price, I believe you are a millennial and Anise is Gen Z. Did I?
It's outside my pay grade, Jenny.
Yeah, that was interesting.
I'm a crop of 82, so I don't know where that lands me, so.
But they have, it's amazing what they have done with an idea. And as Eric alluded to, Price being one of the founders of Horse Country, which is an amazing way to bring breeding farms that previously, not all of them, but a lot of them were close to the public, up close, and just when people see a horse, so much magic happens. And then Anise coming from North Dakota, where there is a racetrack, maybe more than one.
And we've got 2 tracks. We have Chippewa Downs and the North Dakota Horse Park, which is running right now.
But it just goes to show you don't have to have a Keeneland or a Saratoga or a Del Mar to make a fan. Anise grew up a fan in North Dakota, and what she's done with Amplifying Racing, and both are involved in light up racing, which I think is the next great idea. So I think we're going to start with Price. He has but I want to do a shout out. Eric did a shout out to Price's dad. I want to do a shout out to your grandmother, Alice Chandler. You talk about great ladies and everything she's accomplished. You're a 4th generation. Sixth generation horseman. Okay. But what I like about it is each generation has made their own mark in this industry, and you've very much done that. So let's start with the Price.
All right, I'm gonna go. Sorry. Is it me or is it Anise? Okay, great. All right, sorry guys. Thank you, Jenny. Thank you, Eric, for those very kind introductions. As mentioned, my name is Price Bell, and I have the privilege of managing my family's Mill Ridge Farm, which is a commercial thoroughbred nursery in Lexington. I'm speaking here today on behalf of Light Up for Racing, which I serve as a director alongside Christina Blacker, Dr. Jeff Burke, Jason Litt, and Roderick Watchman. I'd like to thank Eric and the National HBPA for inviting me to speak and share the stage with Anise, and of course, Jenny for moderating this panel. Light Up was started about 6 months ago as an education and empowerment nonprofit to help us, everyone in the room, every participant in the industry, communicate about our sport. It is mirrored from the success of Kick Up for Racing, which has had a significant impact on the narrative of racing and improving its social license in Australia. We felt there is a similar need in America and set out to launch our initial pilot phase during this Triple Crown season. Here's a quick video to show us about the first 90 days, hopefully. Let's see. Oh. Bless you.
We're here with Jeff Steele this morning. This is the morning after his surgery, and he's doing really well.
Condylar fracture is generally treated with surgery. The surgery is fixation with screws. In the simple fractures, it's very straightforward.
We're here with Lucky Girl. She just ran awesome. We keep those bandages on just to support, and then we'll start planning for her next race.
why we inject joints and if we do it too much.
When you do inject a joint, many times it's a corticosteroid, which is a potent anti-inflammatory.
Somebody cites horse racing kills as a source. How do we counter them? What is a classy and efficient way through this conversation?
I learned how many bright, concerned young people are involved in our business.
I think the biggest thing I learned was how I, as an individual, and how we as organizations can help tackle the fake news and the negative media surrounding horse racing.
All right. Thank you for that. So, yeah, thank you to team for putting that together. I want to share a quick anecdote that I think a lot about as I think about thoroughbreds in our sport. I hope that there's a parallel that's relevant to you. As Jenny mentioned, my grandmother is named Alice Chandler. She started our farm in 1962. She was born in 1926 and was absolutely in love with horses. Stories of her being found asleep at age 4 with her pony were just the beginning of my grandmother's love of horses, and that inspired generations during her beautiful 95-year life. She had 4 children, my father being the youngest, and he was born in 1954. Dad grew up on the farm, loves horses, and has dedicated his life to them. However, while he can recount pedigrees from the 1970s, he can also tell you with similar precision the type of car each of his friends drove in the 1970s, because he, like his peer group, were obsessed with cars. From last night's incredible experience, I have a new understanding of passion for cars, though, so that's a new level. I am the oldest of my 3 siblings and was born in 1982. I, too, had the privilege of working on the farm at a young age. I grew up in town. I, too, have dedicated a career to horses. But when I was 16, I was consumed with early flip phones and a nascent communication medium called AOL Instant Messenger, as I was anything else. My first car was a Honda Accord, and it served the exceptional role of getting me where I needed to go. Nothing more and nothing less. Our son, George, is born in 2015, and our daughter, Caroline, born in 2017. And while they are currently being raised in town, we're in the process of moving out to the farm. They enjoy life. They love to be outside. They love horses, going to the races. But if you really want to get them talking, ask them about Minecraft, a topic that is still very foreign to me. And in fact, a show of hands, if anyone can explain why the nether is important in the gameplay of Minecraft, will you raise your hand? Has anyone heard of nether or the Minecraft? Okay, all right, excellent. So then we'll do some more research and get back to you. But the reason I start with this anecdote is because our everyday surroundings and that of most in this room, completely immersed in the industry, is not the perspective of the public. The horse and humans' reliance and interaction with them is further and further afield. But thankfully, as we all know, the power of the horse that brings us together today and likely calls us from bed each morning is very present with all people. We have the privilege to welcome guests to Mill Ridge. We'll have 6,000 to 7,000 people this year and are currently the #2 thing to do in Lexington on TripAdvisor. This is a picture of some guests visiting and our tour guide taking a photo of them. Welcoming people to the farm and sharing our horses with them provides us so much joy and inspiration to me that the love of horses with humans is still very much alive. These visitors, representative of an open-minded perspective, are blown away when they visit the farm and see the standard of care afforded to our horses. At last check, we had 225 5-star Google reviews, which is just one indication of their appreciation. Taking a step further, when we evaluate the 25,000 visitors who have visited Mill Ridge since we started, we have a Net Promoter Score of 92. A Net Promoter Score is a metric that measures someone's intent to recommend or intent to return to something. It's a 100-point scale. Southwest Airlines celebrates a 71 and the Ritz-Carlton a 77. So the fact that Thoroughbreds and Millridge Farm is a 92 is just, I mean, it's very, very exceptional, which isn't Millridge. We're not doing anything special, but we're sharing horses. The most telling, though, is the heartfelt appreciation they share by being able to visit. Guests are generally so appreciative of the opportunity and love learning about the farm and meeting our horses. However, the problem is that the public, simply don't know about horses, and their connection with the animal is harder and harder with every generation. But by communicating about our horses, our progress, we can improve the public narrative and change perceptions. We have to be loud and proud. I'm here to take you through how Light Up aims to help with that and outline some of our learnings and achievements from phase one, proof of concept. So, silence breeds suspicion. Assume nothing, communicate transparently. Because the general public is so disconnected from animals, especially horses, they don't understand why they're bred for athletic endeavors. Trying to empathize with this perspective, it reminds me of when COVID-19 arrived in the US in February of 2020. I can remember the distinct fear and concern. Fear of the unknown was compounded by media hysteria, and misinformation was rife. Adding to the stress, those we trust the most, the doctors, were expected to have answers they didn't have. All of this meant speculation was out of control. It's the same thing in racing too. We only need to look at the social media commentary following Just Steel's condylar fracture in the Preakness, which was highlighted part in the video. In the absence of a trusted source delivering a transparent update, these were some of the comments online. Just Steel broke his leg, will soon be dead. Sounds like Just Steel broke a leg in the Preakness. Sincere hopes for his survival before he's killed like so many others. Horses with fractures get killed. Devastating for Just Steel. Why don't they just put him down on the track? However, after the short video with Dr. Bramlage updating on his status, then a further explanation from Dr. McElraith explaining condylar fractures and how, due to advancements in veterinary medicine, it's an injury that can be treated to good prognosis. These were the comments. Good news for Just Steel. Super grateful for the advancements in vet med and all the vets who keep our horses healthy. Updates on Just Steel, who just emerged from a successful surgery to his right front fetlock. I applaud this transparency for letting the fans and supporters know more details. Thank you. More interviews with vets, please. This is the kind of transparency that is key to racing. I use these examples to highlight the importance of transparency and timeliness as a tool to stop damaging and unnecessary speculation. We have the opportunity to grow our sport by sharing the incredible experiences of our horses. So in the stages of communication progress, we have to reframe this from a historic perspective. Never complain and never explain. That was the maxim historically adopted by the royal family. Or if you wish to use a more current cliche, put our head in the sand and hope it all goes away. That has been an approach that we have adopted as an industry to addressing many of our negative coverage. But let me explain why an absence of communication no longer works. Before the internet, talking to the masses was controlled only by the media, and the media was controlled by the hierarchy. The hierarchy could dictate the dialogue and control the narrative. Now it's not. And not only has the anti-racing movement been quick to use the internet and social media to their advantage, the modern media, whose revenue is now controlled by clicks, utilize sensationalism to drive traffic. We are in an era that expects information to be at our fingertips, and when it's not, we expect the worst. Because we have been stuck in the never explained mentality, we have historically been ill prepared to defend ourselves when it was required, so we've stayed quiet. We've hoped negative incidents would slip under the radar, and sometimes they have. However, transparency fosters trust and credibility. In today's environment where information spreads rapidly through social media and chat groups, trying to keep incidents under the radar can and will eventually backfire. If the issue is discovered later, it may appear that we were attempting to hide something which can damage our industry and brands within it severely. This doesn't mean that we need to shout from the mountains on social media as we would in awareness content, such as preventative educational materials on positive horse updates, but we can make an update available that provides context, explains the actions, and the next steps. This approach allows us to frame the incident in a way that is honest and shows our commitment to both integrity and progress. In phase one of Light Up Racing, we began providing updates on horses when there has been an incident or accident with a public appetite for an update. We've shown the winners and the losers from the major races in their days of recovery and discussed medical issues that required simplified answers. They resonated beyond industry inner sanctum with the Derby follow-up video receiving nearly 500,000 views and around 100,000 just for Just Steel updates, and similar numbers for the Mythbuster series, clarifying misinformation with science, just hours after being posted. We've also created resources on the website and held a webinar to assist in explaining common concerns about the industry, educating industry participants who can then pass the information on with confidence. Because people trust people like us and subject matter experts. Shared values is trusted communication. If a silver lining could be found in the early days of the pandemic, it was that I had a very dear friend who got sick with the first wave of COVID. He was in the ICU for 45 days, thankfully just missing being intubated on 2 occasions. Because of him and knowing the severity of the disease, especially in the beginning, we took it very seriously. This plays out in the Edelman Trust Barometer. This is a study of who we as a society trust. We know from research that the trust currency has changed enormously in recent decades. Quote, people like me, those with shared values, and scientists are the most trusted. Communicators, while faith in institutions is an all-time low. Only one above politicians, no offense to the lieutenant governor, he was here before. Scientists are enormously trusted, but their recommendations can often struggle to land because they communicate with confusing terms and complex jargon, making it hard to get their point across. At times, science may not resonate emotionally with audiences, making it harder to build trust and connection. But this can be improved through better messaging by explaining research, creating simplified content, and harnessing peer voices as advocates. Awareness. That's why it's so important that you and your members are the ones communicating these messages. You're the stars of videos because you share the same values as our audience. You have credibility to present trusted information. And it's Light Up Racing's hope to help empower you, to provide you with the confidence, the skills, and the tools to communicate in an authentic way. In fact, our long-term goal is for you to make our sharing platform redundant, for your voice to connect directly with the public, not using us as a middleman, but as a tool to assist in amplification. Because alone we can do very little, together we can do so much. During the first 90 days of this phase 1 for Light Up Racing, we had a cohort training of 20 or so people. The training took place over 2 days, and the purpose of the training was to give tools and how to communicate online and the confidence to do so. This initial cohort became our front line in communicating about racing and countering misinformation and false narratives along the way. Because these are individuals, peers, communicating scientifically supported research, their voices and efficacy was particularly strong. The network effect plays a significant role in growing the snowball of perception influence, where the value and impact of a message or idea increase exponentially as more people adopt and share it. This creates a snowball effect when the initial influence, a small group, our Light Up Racing community, share a message, in this case, an incredible message of progress and improved safety for our horses. The network multiplier, as more people are engaged with, the message spreads to their networks, multiplying its reach and influence. Critical mass, a tipping point is reached, where the message gains widespread acceptance and momentum. The snowball effect, the message continues to grow, gathering speed and size, becoming harder to ignore or resist, reaching the general public and those who typically have not engaged. The network effect amplifies the influence of this initial message, creating a self-reinforcing cycle where more people adopt the message, more people are exposed to it, more people adopt it, and so on. I think the Just Steel Updated is a great example of this effect. It was our most shared piece of content. It started with a Light Up Racing cohort, was shared because it was relevant and content people cared about. As it continued to be shared, it moved to the outer rings of the general public who now know that Just Steel will be okay. Not all injuries are fatal, and he should have a very high quality of life going forward. This is the message that the general public needs to hear. And through the initial phase of Light Up, we collectively were able to achieve this success thanks to Dr. Bramlage, Dr. McElraith, and importantly, Dwayne Lucas and the owners of Just Steel for allowing us to share his story. What we're targeting is this movable middle. We're never going to get the extreme left on the anti-racing, and we already have the extreme right on the pro-racing. It's the outer rings of the snowball that represent this movable middle in the population. We're trying to move them more and more to the right, to pro-racing. This is a crucial segment for our audience because they're not totally immersed in horse racing, and therefore their perception of the sport is enormously influenced by the communities and networks that they're part of. So as we move into phase 2, Community growth, engagement, and empowerment will become an even bigger focus for Light Up for Racing. This is our weapon, our secret sauce, our chance to change the game. The passion for our industry shown every day by the work by those in this room can influence the movable middle as we can shift perceptions, build trust, and ultimately move it in our favor, growing the snowball and therefore growing the sport for generations to come. The goal for Light Up for Racing is to make the progress that we are achieving the main talking point. When this movable middle experiences racing, experiences horses. Because silence breeds suspicion, we must communicate transparently. You in this room are the experts that people trust because we work with horses every day. Our shared values lands trusted communication. We are all in this together. We owe it to our horses and each other to shout from the mountain. We ask that you normalize talking about welfare, about progress. Blow open the barn doors and the farm gates with your phones and talk about it with a little megaphone that we all have in our pockets. We have worked so hard to move things in the right direction, and they're only going to keep improving. We've come so far, have more to go, but the momentum is with us. The future of our industry is now. We're writing it, our science is protecting it, and now we all need to share it. We will never return to 1926 with my grandmother and the horses in most backyards. However, what we have is so special, so intoxicating, and so captivating that I'm sure that we can attract the next generation away from the nether, provided we give them the opportunity and the license to do so. Thanks.
Denise?
Hey, right on to the next one. Well done, Bryce. That was amazing. Tremendous efforts from Light Up for Racing. My name is Anise Montpleasure. I'm the executive director and co-founder of Amplify Horse Racing. Huge thank you to the National HBPA for having me here today. And so we are currently in a room with people who spend night and day, 7 days a week, 52 weeks out of the year with horses. So it's probably pretty hard to imagine your life without them. But that's what I'm going to ask you guys to do right now. So I want you to imagine that you've never been to a horse race before. You've never felt the touch of a horse's muzzle on your palm. You've never walked into a paddock, walked into a stall. You've had zero exposure to horses. So for those of us who are in the industry, life without that probably feels pretty empty or maybe even unimaginable. But for those who've never experienced horses or the horse racing industry, they wouldn't know what they're missing out on and how awesome all of that is. So now think of an organization that brings this excitement to everyone, connecting youth to the horse, removing barriers to entry, and inviting a new generation into the world of horse racing. And this organization is Amplify Horse Racing. My co-founder and I started Amplify in 2019 as a grassroots initiative to serve as the national youth arm of the thoroughbred industry. So we're both young people who got into the industry through very random ways. I'm from Fargo, North Dakota originally, saw a movie about a racehorse, and from there I was like, yes, horse racing, this is for me. And for her, she turned on the TV and she saw Smarty Jones lose the Belmont Stakes. She's from Austin, Texas originally, and it was the same thing for her. Horse racing was the path that she wanted to pursue, but there were really no entry-level pathways to get youth involved at the time. So in starting Amplify, we looked around and we saw that there were these really cool individual programs out there. Some states have more programs than others to get youth involved in the industry, but there really wasn't this widespread platform that cast a wide net to show youth the entry points to get involved. And even looking internationally at other racing countries such as Ireland, England, and Australia, they already had successful efforts in place to do that. Ireland has an organization called Equip that educates youth about racing and industry careers. In England, they have several amazing programs, including Careers in Racing and an initiative called Racing to School, which I'll touch on in a bit. Australia has Thoroughbred Industry Careers. And here in the US, we didn't really have anything to match that, so we had to get it started. And our goal was to provide opportunities that would create pathways to get young people involved. So starting with creating initial touch points that made the industry more accessible, regardless of how close or far a youth live to a racetrack or a farm, or even if they have any sort of exposure in their state. We have this amazing opportunity in the industry to really leverage what we have to bring people to the horse. You know, we can think about many tracks, large and small, across the US that are in the middle of cities, highly urban areas where people would have minimal connection to horses or animals in general. So we have this great opportunity to package that and deliver it to students and educators, parents, and youth all over. And this all ties into developing the industry's future. So creating pathways to make sure that people see themselves in our sport, whether it's in our workforce, pursuing a career as a racehorse owner, or even just being a more educated fan. And so this is what we do and how we enact that programming. We've worked as Amplify to create programming that's as all-encompassing and as possible in order to reach youth where they are. Our signature program is a mentorship program designed for high school and college students that are very entry level in their knowledge or understanding of the sport. So this could be someone who turned on the TV and happened to see horse racing and they're really interested in developing an understanding of how to learn more. You know, somebody who has sort of started on the pathway of the sport and feels like they need more guidance, they can apply for our program and we can pair them with an industry professional mentor, either virtually or in person or a combination of both, who can guide them in developing that young person's knowledge and understanding of the sport and creating an educational plan that can move them forward in that pathway. We've developed amazing educational programs that really focus on taking young people behind the scenes and, you know, taking them into places that could be thought of as exclusive, but that also feels really special. A lot of us take for granted walking into a horse barn or being able to walk into the saddling paddock at a track. And to people who've never done that before, that feels really special. So developing programming around that. We facilitate networking opportunities for young people to connect with other young people and professionals in the industry. We've really leaned into identifying events that we need to have a presence at. Amplify has just come off of 2 weeks of, we were out at a event called Briarfest at the Kentucky Horse Park. I don't know how many of you have heard of Briar horses before, but they're essentially glorified toy horses, many of which are modeled after some famous race horses. So Cody's Wish is the newest thoroughbred Briar horse. And there's a festival of model horses that happens in Lexington, Kentucky, where people come from all over the US, many of which are kids who don't have the opportunity to have their own horse, and they get the chance to learn more about horses at this event. So we as the thoroughbred industry have been able to have a presence here through Amplify. And then we were out at the United States Pony Club's championships and festival. And this is a group of youth that already ride horses, but might not have had a lot of interaction with the thoroughbred industry. So we brought a racing simulator and some virtual reality goggles, and we put them right in the stirrups of a jockey. So they got to experience what it's like to ride in an actual horse race. We found that social media, being really tied into hosting virtual events and a podcast, is a really important piece of accessibility. Again, reaching youth close and far to our racing centers and making sure that even if they've never been to a track before, they can tune into Amplify's content and we'll take them behind the scenes and also educate them about what's going on and some of the language and practices that we use. And we also do classroom visits. So this picture that's up there is of me visiting a summer school just a couple weeks ago. And so as Amplify has evolved, we started in 2019 as a grassroots program. We've officially got our 501c3 in 2020, which was a great time to start a nonprofit. 2021 and 2022, we had an opportunity to essentially be incubated under the umbrella of another organization in Kentucky called the Kentucky Equine Education Project Foundation, the KEEP Foundation. So we were very grateful to them to work with us as we were getting going. And 2023 was actually our first year that we had any full-time staff dedicated to our programming. So we had 2 staff members last year, and with just those 2 people, we were able to reach over 17,000 people with information about the thoroughbred at events and presentations around the country. We welcomed over 400 young people to Amplify hosted events. We accepted 30 mentees into our mentorship program throughout the year, and we presented to over 2,500 students and educators at schools and through special tours. So all of that was programming that was done by request, either working with industry partners who needed our help or teachers who reached out to us directly and asked for us to present to their groups. And our impact this year has been even greater. By the end of 2024, we'll have had in-person activity in 7 different states. We recently held a poll or a survey amongst our mentee graduates to see what they're up to. You know, that program is still young. It started in 2021, but we do want to keep track of what they're doing now and what our retention rate is for keeping those people involved in the industry. And 95% responded that they're still connected to the thoroughbred industry, either as an employee, as a racehorse owner, or as an active fan who would regularly turn on and watch races or go to the races. So that's a fantastic retention rate. Just this year, we've reached over 13,500 youth and educators through in-person programming and presentations. And at the rate that we're going at right now and some of our upcoming events that we have planned, I estimate that we'll be able to reach over 30,000 young people this year, which is really, really exciting. So what's next? We've been really intentional as we've grown about assessing what's going really well, with our programming, what has had the greatest response rate, but also where we feel the most challenged and where we need to continue to grow in order to truly have a national reach. And so we're kicking off our Amplify Impact fundraising campaign to fund the next stage in our development to make sure that we really are a nationally serving organization. And so that's going to help with our mobility and really expanding our presence when we go to events and we interact with people, how we're able to interact through creating a standardized curriculum and expanding our staff. So a mobile education unit would essentially be a vehicle that would be able to develop a route around part of the US. It would be equipped with really cool, engaging sensory activities and learning materials that could visit racetracks and schools and events. The curriculum and regional ambassador model is loosely modeled after an organization in England that I had the opportunity to shadow last year called Racing to School. And that is an organization that's been around for many years and has a great success rate. And what they have done is they've developed a curriculum that ties school-based subjects to a racetrack educational tour. And they go into communities that have racetracks and they bring groups of students from schools in those communities to the track to spend a day there learning about racing as it applies to the school subjects that they're learning about. And the staff that they use to deliver that programming is frequently retired jockeys or people who work part-time in the industry in another capacity, such as an exercise rider or working the sales. And they train those people on delivering education, and so that they're able to roll out this programming across the country. So we'd like to follow a similar model to that and standardizing our programming that's been really successful, making sure that it is connected to school-based subjects and that it's easy to have a plug and play model that can be rolled out across the country as we start to work with different industry partners. And then having ambassadors in different regions that will help us to truly expand that reach nationally and help us to deliver on more requests. This is just a visual of how that works together, with the mobile unit being based in Kentucky, a very loose depiction of its route. We don't have that totally planned yet, but we will be accepting requests. We'll establish Amplify ambassadors in regions where we have interest from regional industry partners, and then our curriculum will be rolled out by those ambassadors. So this program, the Morton Urban Equine Program, is a great example of us partnering with another industry entity to help create and deliver educational programming. Earlier this year, the Illinois Thoroughbred Horsemen's Association had reached out to me and said, we really want to create an educational program for youth in our community. Hawthorne Racecourse is in Cicero, Illinois, which is a very close suburb of Chicago. So a very highly urban area where you wouldn't have a lot of opportunities to see horses. So they wanted to make sure that they could bring kids to the track to be able to see horses. So I worked with them on reaching out to their local school district, developing a syllabus, creating a schedule of programming and activities to go along with that. And we were able to build a program that the school district shared as one of their summer extracurricular activities for high school students. And so we were able to bring a group of high school students out to the track for 4 mornings in June, where they spent the entire morning learning about all things horse racing, from veterinary medicine to how the industry works. And by the last day, they actually got to ride a track pony. And these kids who came out, we had 5 participants and their educator. The most that they had ever done prior to this program was touch a horse, and some of them hadn't even done that. And 4 came away saying that they wanted to become a veterinarian. And so we have a big need for equine vets in our industry. So that's pretty exciting to hear. And a big part of the success of this program was the dedication of the ITHA and their team and horsemen at the track to making it possible. David McCaffrey was instrumental in engaging his horseman's liaison and office manager. His horseman's liaison actually shared her track pony with us all week for demonstrations. Chris Block opened up his barn to us and used his race horses for demonstrations and really as a model throughout the week. And I was able to be there to act as the facilitator, but it was a tremendously impactful event. So why Amplify? As we expand and start to grow nationally, why should different regions or horsemen's groups look at working with us? Adding education as another project for you to do can be a big task. A lot of us struggle with workforce, so trying to think about hiring another person just to do that job can be a big project. So let Amplify come in, and we want to work with horsemen's groups and racetracks to be able to develop and roll out programming, because we're pretty good at it so far. We've had proven programming. We have an amazing team that's going to continue to grow. And so we really want to work with different regions around the US to roll out this type of programming. And ultimately, we're going to have more impact working together in a unified way with strategic, intentional programming and uniformity amongst how we're reaching out to educators and students and bringing them to tracks. And again, this all ties into developing workforce, developing owners, developing fans of our sport, and really, engaging the future of our industry. So we're going to start rolling out our regional ambassador networks in 2025 to help roll out and implement some of our expanded horse racing programmings. And we'd love to have or get requests from interested regional program partners who would like to be part of that. So let's all amplify horse racing and develop the industry's future. We all have the power to do so. It's in our hands. And I'd love for anybody to reach out to me with questions.
Well, I've got a few questions. I'll start with Price since you went first. How many responses did you say you had to online?
I think, so right after the Derby, we did in 2 parts. We had a video, a few seconds video of each participant. I think that was our most popular one. And I had month ago, it had 500,000 or 600,000 views.
But in responding to something that
Oh,
you see
sorry,
that's
sorry.
untrue or
Apologies.
not.
3,200, I think, is the
3,200.
time we made the video.
Do you have somebody that's just had a laptop all day looking for that stuff and then
Well,
firing off emails?
You know, it was
or-
Anise. I don't know if you saw her, but she was in there. And it was there was a WhatsApp, which is like a text kind of platform that people would I guess listening group, I guess we call it, eyes and ears. And so if someone saw something that was misinformation, they would share it in that group, and then people would then respond as their own individual. And a good example, there was an op-ed written in the Skidmore Alumni Journal, I think, about that horse racing should end in Saratoga, and that they were anyway. And from that Eyes and Ears group, we found an alumni of Skidmore who felt differently. So anyway, we then had a second counter op-ed written by that person to again counter the misinformation. So
Was there any response
to that in particular?
from the
I don't-
Skidmore alumni?
I don't think, I don't think so. I think more if you stand up and counter somebody with misinformation, they oftentimes will go away, right? And you're really doing it to impact other members of their community or even your own community. If someone reads horse racing is bad, well, then whoever might also read that might think, oh, horse racing is bad. But if you, for lack of a better word, if you punch back and are like, actually, horse racing is good and it does these things, then it can help shift the narrative of maybe not the person who is saying horse racing is bad, but their community and the people who they follow and or follow them rather.
And how quickly after Just Steel, it came out after the Preakness that he had sustained a fracture? Did you get that video with Larry Bramlage? And did somebody, just one of your people, call him up and say,
To
done?
Roderick Watchman's credit, he drove to Rood and Riddle. I think that I believe what happened was, I think that was Saturday. I think Just Steel van there Sunday. I think he was there in surgery Monday morning, but don't quote me on that. And Roderick went to interview Larry right after surgery. So that was actually Dr. Bramage leaving surgery. And then Dr. McElraith later that day or the next day had explained what a condylar fracture was and what the procedure that Dr. Bramage had done. So it was within a few days.
And Anise, these ambassadors you're talking about, the Amplify ambassadors across the country, are those volunteer positions or are they paid?
We would see that as being a paid position. So people who would apply or we would work with independent contractors and we would train them on our materials and on our messaging, and then they would help us in the rollout of that programming. But we can always use volunteers too for speakers, for tours and programming. So that's a great way for people to engage as well.
And I love your story about what you did at Hawthorne. I mean, if you could, to me, if it could be done in Hawthorne, it could be replicated anywhere. And also, I was thinking with Dr. White and the need for volunteers, is there a way to get synergy between these groups? For instance, if you did something in Iowa and maybe some of these kids, maybe they don't say they want to be a vet, but maybe they do, but maybe in the interim, they can be trained to be volunteers. I mean, can that lead to things like collaborations?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that there are a lot of opportunities out there, to leverage volunteer opportunities as ways to get young people involved and get them engaged with our sport. And so it's something that we certainly want to do more of is, whether it's aftercare organizations or other nonprofits in the industry, if they do have volunteer positions, those are a great sort of next step for us to share with a young person that is just starting to get involved in the industry, that they can hop into a volunteer position and learn even more.
And for both of you, what do you want from this group here? What do you want from these executive directors, these presidents and board members that are here from the HBPA affiliates?
I think support, sharing with your membership, and also just recognizing that we all need to do a better job of sharing horses with people, that the general public doesn't have access to horses. I know it might feel uncomfortable. It sure felt uncomfortable, I think, to Dr. Bramlage or Dr. McElraith to, go on right afterwards about the surgery that that Just Steel had. But the impact on that was so profound. And I think that the more that we are transparent, the more that we're willing to share, the better. I mean, we all have the power to do it. I know it can feel intimidating, but taking that first step to engage, be transparent, and share horses is, I think, all that we can do to try and grow our sport.
Yeah, and I think to that, being willing to share your time in general, whether it's engaging with Light Up and creating and sharing content, or being willing to volunteer or serve as a mentor or serve as a speaker. And I think that our industry is tremendously open and receptive to educating young people. But, keeping yourself open to being willing to volunteer for different programs. And again, awareness is really important. Understanding that Light Up and Amplify exists and talking about it and telling people about it and helping us to spread the word is helpful to those organizations.
And Price, you mentioned early on in your presentation about the need for everyone to be involved. And we've had some of these conferences before spoke about the importance of having horsemen. If you're on social media, just take a picture of a horse and put it up there. And it's amazing how many hits we'll get. If you're not comfortable with social media, get an exercise rider. They all seem to be great at it. Or get a relative. Or there are also some people that you can pay that do some amazing things with marketing your barn and videos and social media. But what can we do to make it comfortable for our members to, not everybody is a Ron McQuett that writes these amazing blogs and is constantly on social media. How do we get other horsemen comfortable to be this ambassadors where everybody's an ambassador for racing?
I think it just takes trying. I think that everyone, I think that anyway, my dad, again, was born in 70 or 54. So he's turned 70 this year. And he would be, if he were up here, he would say that, I encouraged him to get on Twitter. And now he's very proud of his followers and how many people retweet his, things. And I think it's just dipping your toe in, and it's not obviously for everybody, but it is, I think, incumbent upon us all to try. So
I have a question for you, executive directors and presidents and other horsemen out there. For your members that aren't comfortable with social media, would any of them, if we had a thing, say, where these people did a Zoom call or something to like talk it through and show how in very easy steps you can create a Twitter account, would we get any takers on that? Is it worth even trying? The silence is kind of,
deafening.
says all maybe we need to say. Yes, we do have some people.
I'm sorry. It's almost like the elevator speech thing. I think good comebacks that we can put that elevate us when we reply to a comment that isn't correct in regards to this industry.
And I think that's very accurate. And that's where we're working towards for Light Up. Again, we just started a 90-day trial in essence to see if we were necessary in the three-legged stool of public perception change in our industry. But I guess when people write something that is upsetting, the first reaction admittedly is to punch them back. And that's not the appropriate. It's not always appropriate. It certainly can be, but I think coming from a place of empathy, coming from a place of, of recognition that most likely they haven't experienced horses, coming from a place of trying to educate them about horses and recognizing that they don't have the same experience that we have. And then ultimately, from our stance, we'll invite them to the farm or invite them to come and see horses or, speak to someone who has. And I think that that's where, as I mentioned, we've had 6,000 to 7,000 people this year, but we're going to invest in a visitor center and try and have 20,000 to 30,000 people come, because it just feels like it's our way of trying to grow the sport, push the sport forward. At the end of the day, we as humans, I'm the most guilty, we're the problem. It's not the horses. If we just got out of our own way, we would be a much better place. And so I guess it feels a responsibility to share horses with people as transparently as possible.
Of all the panels that we have this week here, in my opinion, of their own individual importance. This panel, there's none going to be as more, to me, as important as this panel. As someone that is kind of in the middle, I go in and out. I hang out. I used to hang out with Bob Holtis, and I'd hang out with Terry Thompson. I mean, the guys are different, varying ages. And I can tell you that the older people did not want to get involved with helping spread information and or stop misinformation. The give a care just wasn't there. They were around when everyone understood horses. Most people owned horses or knew someone that did. And or they were around when things were a lot more acceptable socially. And now I've noticed the last 15 years how that's changed and how we're literally fighting the majority of the fights that we do daily based on poor perception and most oftentimes misconception. So of everything we do, when we talk about gambling, we talk about condition books and everything that's important, there's nothing to me as important as this. And I applaud this. I got so excited. I wanted to see this part, and I was so excited that it was done like it was, and it's so professionally thought out. But I can tell you that each person is their own microphone. When we had the things go on at Churchill Downs last year's Derby time, there wasn't one person that I run into that found out what I did for a living, didn't ask me. It had nothing to do with their educational value or their investment in the sport. It's what's going on with all those horses fatalities. What's going on? I mean, I'm sure all of you people in here were under the same duress I was. And I was so happy to be able to say, whenever something goes on, and I looked up and I saw the Just Steel, which was wonderful, was whenever somebody puts out something bad, and it's often accompanied with comments of misinformation or ignorant comments, unfortunately. Whenever I saw that, it started making me get a little twinkle, like, you know, this could be possible with the right effort, but we all have to do it. Every one of us owes the horse, owes the industry, the little bit of energy it takes to say something good about what we do for a living. And if you get a shot, we're gonna harass the hell out of you about coming to Arkansas. We're going to do what we can do to bother you and lean on you. And I hope everyone else in the room does as well, because it's equally, it's very important.
Thank you, Ron. Really appreciate you saying that. So thank you. Because Ron is certainly leading from the front on this.
And it's so interrelated. And I want to bring up Ron, speaking of one individual and the change you can bring. Aftercare can be just such a huge part of these marketing campaigns with the wonderful stories. And Ron and his wife Laura have been so generous, just sharing Whitmore's, adventure into his second career. But the bell, the ringing the bell at Arkansas, at Oaklawn Park, that when someone wins a race, then, and you were explaining, I didn't know how it works. You just fill out a form or something. The horseman's bookkeeper deducts it from the purse account, right?
Obviously we need the money, but you talked about combating a negative and you needed material. The reason that come up wasn't to generate money. It was that there was, racehorsing wrongs, and unfortunately, in some cases, Pollock report and other, ill-intentioned or ignorant groups that would attack us daily. And every time we have a race day, we have at least a possibility of 10 good stories. 10 people want to race. 10 horses want to race. Some maidens broke their maiden. There's all kinds of stuff, but nothing was getting out. People climbed a tree to say something bad about our industry, but no one would even get out of a whisper to say the truth about all the good. So the bell come from a posture of, we need to have something that we could post to combat the negative. No matter what, it's a positive interaction. You put up there, somebody's happy, it doesn't matter. You can scroll right past it if you want to, but it's going to be there, and it's going to push that negative crap further down the thread. And if you have 10 people ring the bell, 10 posts about individuals that gave to the retirement, if you get that, then you've shoved someone said, I hate Churchill Downs, they're a corporate monster and they hate horse racing. That goes all the way off the page because there's 10 people that have positive posts. So that's how the bell came. The money comes, it's very easy. I'm willing to talk to anyone about it. I think it's a great thing. The announcer says, ladies and gentlemen, that bell you just heard indicates a generous donation on behalf of the connection of Whitmore or Sir Biscuit to the Arkansas Thoroughbred Retirement Center or to New Vocations or to whoever. And the people in the grandstand, they don't realize, but they just heard the greatest marketing ploy to our industry that we've had for a long time. It's a lot better than Go Baby Go. You hear
Amen.
you hear a bell and you automatically go, you know, that somebody just donated to the retired thoroughbred. They are doing things positive for these athletes when they're done. And I would like very much to help everyone get that. I think but I just want to reemphasize the work you're doing is needed and appreciated.
Thank you very much.
And the entity can decide where the money goes. It could be for anything. It could be for Light Up Racing or for Amplify.
You know, I want to just add one thing about the bell. The cooperation of the racetrack is vital because we need that announcement every time that there's a winner who rings the bell. Also, Ron had the bell forged, and it's the kind that rings 3 times louder than the average bell. You can hear it all over Oaklawn Park when somebody really rings it good. And we've had people donate as much as $10,000 to the retirement program to ring that bell. But Oaklawn recognizes them, the announcer does, and the PA, and it's a big deal. And it's posted, it raised us $80,000 last year in 65 racing days. So that gives you an idea of how much of a hit that you can take. Thank you.
Impressive.
Thank you.
So we're running out of time, but I want to ask y'all, speaking of, so there's the indelicate question of financing. How are you all funded?
You want to take it first, Denise?
Sure, I'll go first. So we've been funded to this point almost entirely off of industry donations. So, 2023 was our first year with full-time staff. So we went and approached 5 key industry funders, including Breeders' Cup, the Jockey Club, Godolphin, Keeneland, and Churchill. So we've been primarily, we've had a lot of our programming focused on Kentucky so far, although we are getting out to other states. And so that helped us to really get going and solidify more of our programming. But for our upcoming Amplify Impact campaign, we'll be raising a lot more of that to expand nationwide. But, it's an ongoing thing, and it's really an investment in the future of the industry, whether it's for in education with Amplify or Light Up and our messaging or aftercare. It's really important to consider continuing to reinvest in our industry and our industry's future.
And so we're currently housed in the Bluegrass Community Foundation, which is I guess an umbrella organization. We're an organization underneath it, so we can accept 501c3 donations as we define what our next steps look like, standing up our own organization. We're initially funded by seed money from Basic-Tipton, Jockey Club, Spendthrift Farm, and a variety of individuals. The lowest donation we received was $5, and the highest was $50,000, which I'm really proud of, that people, that was that meaningful to people. But now we're pivoting into figuring out what do we look like going forward, and how do we adjust from what we've learned, pivot, and grow. So we'll be out raising money again. We hope to raise money to stand up as an organization and then have ongoing funding and ongoing going forward. So it's currently in process. The objective was start up as quickly as possible, define what we do well, what we didn't do well, and where we want to grow from there. So
Questions, comments? Eric?
Well, thank you, everyone. I really appreciate that. Let's give these panelists a round of applause.
Thank you all.
Thank you, guys.